Christmas drama on One as Miss Marple is propelled into another perplexing puzzle.
Police are on their way.
Then it's true.
Yes, my dear, it is.
Was it an accident?
No.
That leaves only one thing. Murder.
On the trail of a murderer, Miss Marple investigates this Sunday at 8:05 on One.
All right, I apologize.
You're really sorry?
I'm really, really sorry. I apologize unreservedly.
John Cleese has his world turned upside down in 15 minutes in a fish called Wanda. First on BBC1, the news with Jill Dando. It's 9:20.
Mikhael Gorbachev says he's going on holiday, but he won't be leaving politics. As he said farewell to friends and colleagues, he told them he would not oppose Boris Yeltsin, but said he had big plans for himself. And as President Bush formally recognizes Russia and 5 other republics, arms agreements, he says, will now be easier to achieve. Good evening. Mikhail Gorbachev says he has no intention of giving up politics. Just 24 hours after his resignation as president, he said he had big plans for the future. Mr. Gorbachev has now said farewell to his staff at the Kremlin and cleared his office to make way for Boris Yeltsin. In another development, the Soviet parliament has met to vote itself out of existence.
To a round of applause, Mikhail Gorbachev turned up at a Moscow hotel tonight where he was throwing a farewell party for friends, colleagues and the international press. No longer president, but simply a citizen of the new Commonwealth, he announced he'd be taking a break for a few weeks to weigh up everything he's done, he said, and to have some time to himself. As he said goodbye with a champagne toast, he made it clear he has no intention of leading any opposition to Boris Yeltsin. He said he'd told the Russian president that as long as his leadership is based on democracy, he will not work against it. Mr. Gorbachev, in any case, is looking forward to some well-earned relaxation. When our cameras were allowed into the Kremlin's corridors of power today to see Mr. Gorbachev's office, it was empty. It was from this room that for over 7 years he struggled against his hardliners and gradually dismantled Soviet totalitarianism. It was from here that he changed the face of Europe and the world. Today, his presidential staff were still trying to take it all in. This was probably their last day at work, although technically they'll still get their wages until January the 2nd, and they'll receive 2 months' worth of severance pay.
Many of us don't know what will happen in the future. Not everybody will have the jobs in the new administration. And it's natural when people are losing their jobs, they're concerned.
With the Russian flag now flying over the Kremlin in place of the hammer and sickle, the Soviet parliament today formally voted the USSR and itself out of existence. Only a handful of deputies were there, though, and this was a rather pathetic end for the parliament, which once saw ferocious debates and Gorbachev glasnost at its best. Workmen didn't even wait for the vote to remove the plaque which said Supreme Soviet of the USSR. Yet another symbol of the old Soviet Union had been taken down, but they kept the screws as souvenirs. Not all the reminders of communist rule here have gone from the Kremlin, but it probably won't be long before they disappear as well. Ben Brown, BBC News, Moscow.
In Washington tonight, President Bush said he was confident nuclear weapons in the former Soviet Union were secure. Earlier, he formally recognized Russia and 5 other members of the new Commonwealth. He believed it would now be easier to work out arms control agreements because the republics did not view the United States as an enemy.
After a Christmas break, President Bush returned to the White House to mark an event as momentous as victory in World War I or II, according to some American commentators. The end of the Soviet Union and the Cold War left the president generous rather than triumphant in his televised address.
The United States applauds and supports the historic choice for freedom by the new states of the Commonwealth. We congratulate them on the peaceful and democratic path they have chosen and for their careful attention to nuclear control and safety during this transition. Despite a potential for instability and chaos, these events clearly serve our national interest.
Mr. Bush completed paperwork ratifying the Conventional Forces in Europe treaty with Moscow, then explained that arms control might be easier in future, despite worries about nuclear proliferation.
We don't have the concept on their part of viewing the United States as an enemy, as happened over all the years of the Cold War. And from the representations that have been made by the various presidents of the republics, I think it will be far easier now to hammer out whatever additional arms control agreements are in the world's interest, and certainly in the interest of the United States, than it was before.
Foreign aid is never popular here, especially not in a sour economy during an election campaign. But Mr. Bush, fretting about Moscow's economic collapse, promised help.
So what I think we ought to be doing is helping where we can with food, helping where we can with medicine, and helping where we can with private investment. And of course,
no date has been set for a face-to-face meeting with Boris Yeltsin, though Mr. Bush predicted a summit before too long. Next month, the United States will host a conference to coordinate aid to the former Soviet Union. Then the question is whether Mr. Bush is prepared to put his taxpayers' money where his mouth is and offer more than simply verbal encouragement to the struggling economies of the Commonwealth of Independent States. Gavin Esler, BBC News, Washington.
There are reports of an informal ceasefire in Tbilisi, the capital of the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, where supporters and opponents of President Gamsakhodia have been fighting for 5 days. More than 40 people have been killed and around 250 wounded. The president is trapped inside the parliament building.
I'm not against negotiations, and but I am against their criminal methods. Criminal and violence and civil war.
Police in India say at least 55 people were killed and 20 others injured when Sikh militants opened fire on passengers in a train in the Punjab. It's the latest in a series of terrorist attacks in the region.
According to the police, the train was travelling down a branch line from Ludhiana to Firozpur after dark when the communication cord was pulled. 4 young Sikhs had boarded the train at the start of its journey and were joined by 6 others waiting where it halted. They are reported to have separated the Hindu passengers from the Sikhs before they opened fire with AK-47 rifles. Almost all the dead were Hindus. There are no reports of any arrests so far. 2 weeks ago, Sikh separatists exploded a bomb in the city of Ludhiana, Punjab's most important business and industrial centre. The bomb was hidden in a white van which was in a car park. The army is now leading the campaign against the Sikh separatists, and the government claims that the soldiers are achieving success. But the army was used against the Sikh separatists earlier and ultimately made the situation worse.
The group holding 2 German hostages in Lebanon has released a videotape of the 2 men celebrating Christmas. In a statement, the Strugglers for Freedom group said Thomas Kempner and Heinrich Strubig would be released only when 2 Shiite Muslim brothers in jail in Frankfurt were freed. Figures published today show North Sea oil and gas production fell last month to its lowest level since August. The industry index, prepared by the Royal Bank of Scotland, also predicts poor revenues in the new year.
The figures show a small drop in the amount of oil extracted from the North Sea in November, following 5 months of rising output. The decrease at 3% isn't huge and may not be repeated, but its effect is heightened by 2 other factors. The world price of oil has dropped, and the dollar, in which oil is priced, is weak against the pound. What it means is that in August, a barrel of North Sea oil was worth £12.44. But now, in December, it's worth only £9.78. It all conspires to cut the value of North Sea oil to the economy.
The average daily value of oil landed has dropped quite a lot over the last month. And this may continue for some time, because even though the oil output will increase, the value of oil has actually fallen. As a result, the Chancellor is going to find that the money coming to him from the oil sector is going to diminish. And for somebody who's worried about the public sector borrowing requirement, this is going to be a problem.
The Chancellor has been trying to discern an end to the recession from a tiny increase in industrial output. But those figures have been boosted by the value of oil. With that dropping, a true end to the recession slips further away.
Nearly 1,300 convicted criminals have spent Christmas in police cells because of overcrowding in British prisons. The Home Office says the problem will be solved when new prisons open, but for this year, police are having to act as warders.
This might look like a prison. Almost all these men are convicted criminals. But this is, in fact, an ordinary suburban police station. And these are policemen, not prison officers. The shortage of space in Britain's jails means just under 1,300 prisoners are being held in police cells like these around the country. Caring for men such as these at West Bromwich Police Station is not a role the Chief Constable wants for his officers.
On the one hand, we are the catchers, but at the moment we're also the keepers, which makes it increasingly difficult.
Although there are few complaints from the inmates, it's recognised that a police station can't provide the facilities of a modern prison.
Obviously, because you haven't got your freedom, you know, it's a bit depressing. But as containers go, it's pretty relaxed, you know, sound atmosphere, the best you're going to get, really.
The Home Office says that in the coming year, 7 new prisons will be opened, providing 5,000 extra places, which should solve the problem.
And now, with news of the Boxing Day sporting action, here's Rob Bonnet.
Manchester United have opened up a 2-point lead over Leeds at the top of the First Division. Their 2 matches today produced a combined total of 15 goals. Manchester at Oldham scored 6 league goals for the first time in 14 years. Dennis Irwin got the first 2 minutes from the start, and Andrei Kanchelskis
had led Dom Perignon to the simple solution: seal the bottles of bubbling wine with a cork.